Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I'm George Fintikakis. I have the honor to moderate our next panel, which is about energy security and the path to a just transition, on how green transition is progressing, which is the winners as well, which are the losers, what about job opportunities, as well as how we will ensure that distribution of all these green costs and opportunities do not make bigger inequalities. I have the pleasure, I welcome our distinguished guests, the Washington, D.C. correspondent for Kathimerini as well, non-resident senior fellow at Atlantic Council, Katerina Sokou, and the head sustainability development at Jinko Solar, Lin Sun. Mrs. Sokou, many say that the EU has set over-ambitious targets, green targets, I mean, such as raising costs, which can undermine the whole project. Moreover, we see, for example, Canada, where countries like Canada, rich countries like Canada, where people are reacting to the imposition of a carbon tax. What's your view on that?
It's been, thank you, George. I have to say I'm no longer a correspondent for Kathimerini in Washington. I'm a columnist now and always with the Atlantic Council. So we did a report at the Atlantic Council about how to square the energy circle, which is between energy transition and energy security and affordability. Mm-hmm. How do you manage to satisfy all needs, right? And it seems like an impossible equation on how to. The energy transition is a process. It's true that Europe has set some of the most ambitious goals on getting there. In my mind, from the United States, where I'm based for the past 12 years, I couldn't understand the whole argument about whether gas should be an energy transition fuel or not. Mm-hmm. It was evident in my mind that it should be one. And if anything, I think after the war in Ukraine and during the war in Ukraine, it's become obvious, if not for transition purposes, for green transition purposes, definitely for energy security purposes, we need to keep gas into the equation for the time being. So that's one aspect of it. The other thing that Europe was hasty to do, and it created a handicap when it had to suddenly get rid of its dependence on Russian gas and oil, was getting rid of its own nuclear facilities where it was producing energy. And that was something that also complicated the energy transition. That all being said, I think that the fact that Russia attacked Ukraine, it created the geopolitical impetus for, beyond the economic one, right, beyond the environmental one, for Europe to actually increase its energy transition and its goals so that it can move toward the energy transition quicker. We see, as you mentioned, Canada, for example, like on April 1st, the carbon tax there was raised. Mm-hmm. And in this environment of high inflation, affordability crisis, people are not, it's not easy for people to actually understand the rationale behind it. They see that they cannot afford their groceries anymore. That's the main issue that the politicians will need to address as we move towards this energy transition process, because energy hasn't become cheaper. Despite the fact that obviously renewables are becoming cheaper, energy as a whole in Europe, and that's also related to its ambitious energy transition targets, hasn't been reduced. So this is creating the political pressure. You have the geopolitical pressure, and this is all complicating the economics of the energy transition as well. And this is where I would argue you need to see greater transatlantic cooperation between the US and the European Union, for sure, and also more within the European Union. Someone mentioned in one of the earlier panels, you really need to have a pan-European approach to energy infrastructure, increasing the regional interconnectedness. Certainly in our region, Southeastern Europe, which is behind, but also viewing it as a pan-European project and not a national project.
Right. Mrs. Sun, do some policies need to be more realistic? And how can renewable energy, the solar one, I mean, Jinko is a major solar company. How can the solar energy be scaled up to ensure energy security?
Yeah, so thank you so much, George, for the questions. I invite all of you just to follow my journey, just to put yourself in the shoe of the company itself. If you imagine yourself, you are as well the manufacturer of a solar panel. We have business for big utility projects, a secure energy supply. As well, we offer products for distributions for individuals, for residential households. Mm-hmm. When I received this title, we are going to discuss energy transition and energy security. There are different levels of interpretations. We have the macro level and micro level. So just to answer your question, I would love to take this approach as the micro perspective for individuals, for households. Imagine that I have a house. What does it mean for secure energy supply? It means that I have my electricity bill, which is affordable. I can drive my cars. I can take care of the consumptions. So driving from these motivations, we are trying to offer the solutions from a company perspective, the security with the three elements here. I highlight one is availability, two is accessibility, and three is affordability. Mm-hmm. So everything, the activities around is trying to achieve the goal. I'm not talking about our company itself. We're talking about the players in renewable energy sectors. So if we can zoom in a little bit to our further industry in solar, and particular for Jinko perspective, the practice now we're trying to offer is the low cost for sure, because due to the evolutions of technology during the past decades, now solar is becoming one of the cheapest renewable energy among all the energy mix. The LCOE drive dramatically that now we will be able to offer to the world the very nice products of solar panels with technology. But at the same time, which is extremely important, is the resilience of the supply chain, which we understand. We're living in the globe that people share comments and interests together. So information like together, the cooperations, not only between US and United Nations, EU, but as well from Asia to the West. We need the conversation, the dialogues to understand the expectation from the EU and the commitment from the East, then so that we can understand further. So this is some reflections.
Yeah, right. I was wondering, how do a Chinese company view the EU strategic autonomy strategy, which is, I mean, we heard Vestager, Margaret Vestager, the EU competition chief, on Tuesday, I believe, that EU cannot afford to see what happened on solar panels happening again on electric vehicles or wind turbines or essential chips. How do you see all that? What's your view on the issue?
Well, first of all, thanks so much. It's a big question. So if only from a Chinese company perspective, I would say, first of all, the globe is interlinked because of the business in the interdependence. Right now, we are in the words that as well offer the best products, as well the affordable products to different territories and jurisdictions. For example, even in China, we have 2030 and 2060. The targets to reach carbon neutrality according to our strategy. So rationale-wise, we understand in EU, there must be a plan, a master plan as well, to achieve its strategic goal. For companies like Jinko, we are shipping our products around the world, including Europe. Europe, we ranked #1 last year in 2023, which gives us at least 30 to 50 gigawatts of annual shipments to these territories. We respect the EU regulations. We engage with the EU legislators. We talk to the key suppliers, our clients, for example, in Greece and all other countries in Europe. Plus, we know there's active players in different aspects, civil societies, investment banks, development banks. They are all helping Europe to create a better grounds for renewable growth, which means inevitably, including Jinko and every other players in this rule, that we respect and we interact.
Okay, right. Katerina.
Can I follow up on that as
well?
Yeah,
sure, sure.
There is a question about dependency, right? And where do you feel that your most basic needs of the economy, right, the energy supply, is being provided from? The crisis in Ukraine and the invasion by Russia has created this moment of truth for Europe, where we had to reassess this interdependence that for the longest time we thought, okay, they're equally dependent on us because they're getting our money for their oil and gas, right? So we assumed that nothing would disturb this balance. So for the solar and not just solar, any kind of energy transition, which will be the future of energy, we all hope that eventually we will be 100% dependent on green energy, right?
Yeah, 2050.
So once this is achieved, have we created a dependency on a single country, a single industry that might undermine our fundamental energy security, which is the provision of energy, right, on a geopolitical scale? And of course,
what's the answer to that?
Well, I would argue that we don't want to be dependent on any single security supplier in the future, as we used to do in the past. I mean, Germany is experiencing it right now very, very vividly and with great economic cost.
Yeah, sure. Natural gas is a different thing.
But it's still energy, right?
From solar power.
Yes.
Right.
But you are dependent on products that come from another country.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a question here.
We're aware of the Biden policy for the green transition.
Yeah.
What about Donald Trump's policy? Yeah. I mean, what will happen to U.S. green transition policy if Donald Trump wins the November election?
So I just wrote an article about that, the economic theory, which you all got in, as part of the... And I was studying like his campaign promises, right? Trump's campaign promises. So his promise is basically to make... to provide to Americans the cheapest energy in the world, right? How does he hope to achieve that? Drill, baby, drill. So go back to drilling and actually reverse all the incentives that President Biden gave for the green energy transition, including for electric vehicles, including for renewables. That's all in his campaign promises. That's what he's promising to do. Now, if with this he can achieve the cheapest energy in the world, I'm not sure, but this is what he's been promising. Now, in the first, Trump wasn't very favorable to green energy in his first term either. And the fact of the matter was that a lot of US states, like California, big economies really, continue to invest in green energy and continue to engage with both European countries and other countries, Canada in particular, to keep developing green energy. So I don't expect this to stop, even if Trump is reelected. It's just that it will create, obviously, a moment of wonder for the rest of the world on how to proceed.
Setback.
A setback for sure, and it will leave Europe on its own, having all these ambitious targets that no one else is following. and with a cost to its own industry, right? And there, I should note, yesterday at the Financial Times, there was this article about the European Roundtable for Industry, right, who are expecting, they have calculated that we need 800 billion until 2030 to invest in energy, upgrading our energy infrastructure in the European Union. And they're saying this cannot come just from the the private sector. We need to have public sector incentives as well. So Europe will, one way or another, Europe will have to get its act together to reassess where we stand at the situation, including the geopolitical aspects of it, and maybe readjust its strategy in order to still be achievable, right, going forward.
Thank you. Someone in the previous panel, I think, mentioned how negative prices are registering in nearly all European countries, right? As a result of the increasing share of renewables and photovoltaics all around. I was wondering, could this cancel investments in renewable energy and therefore affect companies which produce the panels such as Jinko?
Okay, I want to first of all comment and echo the global partnerships to keep the supply chain resilient is the common goal, which I agree, which means for our individual company perspective, we have collaborations in US, we have factories in Southeast Asia and in China. We have partners for our suppliers from Germany, from US, from other rest of the world, which means from certain perspective, such solar supply chain is trying to be driven to a more sustainable and mutually understandable way for the future. So this is the comments to the previous discussion, which I think it's important because resilience is something that we wanted to keep it an all for us. Particular to your question, I think demands always drive all the business. Give you an example. Last year, I think the total installations of PV modules, annual PV installation, more than 400 gigawatts. Then only single country, China itself, take almost 180 to 200 gigawatts. So it will be around 50% of the total global installations. Despite to all the price turbulence, all the discussions around the cost, supply chain, etc.
Yeah, my question was focused on Europe.
But for Europe, yes, I'm coming to that. So we given this example of understanding our markets for the demands of renewables. Same applies for Europe. We see there's a huge demand for distributed PV, for example, but not only for PV. Now we are growing into storage as well. So Jinko, we are offering BESS solutions for residential plus commercial and industrial.
Storage.
So, yes. So in this case, the pure PV may not sound as appealing as before, but the combination of PV plus storage is definitely the future because it stabilizes the energy solutions for not only individual household, but as well for companies, for farms, and for big utilities, solar parks.
And there is a lack of widespread storage capacity in the EU.
Yes, and then that will drive further rounds of investments for sure. And that will balance the financial...
I see.
Yes.
Well, I'm afraid our time is up. Would you like something for closure?
One aspect, I would say as a general comment, when we were talking about energy transition and energy security, in this day and time, they're interrelated. You cannot have energy transition without achieving a security in the process, right? If anything, otherwise the whole effort is going to break down.
Without natural gas.
Certainly.
What will still need it?
I mean, our Prime Minister is going to Vilnius today.
2050, as many organizations say.
Yes. So what I was going to say is that energy interconnectedness is, and is of critical importance going forward in order to achieve both energy security and energy transition. The upgrading of the electricity grid is badly needed, both in Greece, in our region, and to that end, I was going to comment on the summit that is happening in Vilnius of the Three Seas Initiative, where the Greek Prime Minister is going today, and I guess that's why he won't be in Delphi tomorrow. But the fact of the matter is that Greece has joined the Three Seas Initiative. It was something that the Atlantic Council of this report were suggesting that Greece should do. It made perfect sense to add the Aegean to the Three Seas to actually integrate the whole region.
And the aim is to strengthen energy security.
And this is, yes, for the vertical corridor. I mean, you cannot have it without Alexandroupolis. So it now all comes together, and hopefully we will see both private investment and public sector involvement, and public, both from the US and the European Union, like funds coming to promote the infrastructure that needs to happen in the region.
Thank you for watching. Our time is up. Thank you again.
Thank you, George.